everyone, and welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Today, I'm here with Jon, and we're going to talk about changing mindsets in Airsoft. Mindset is something that we've discussed a few times, and it's something that not only varies by person, obviously, but also by time. You know, your mindset on your first day of playing Airsoft is not the same as it is, on day 100 or as it might be today. And it can vary day by day, depending on your own particular mood. Now, you might be hearing Gurney Halleck saying to you, what has mood to do with it? But the truth is that we play Airsoft for fun, and if your mood is low or high, it will have an impact on your mindset as well. So all of these factors combine to make mindset something variable, something shifting. And in fact, when we talk about mindset, we often talk about shifting your mindset to something more appropriate or more effective for your current situation. And shifting your mindset can occur in both simple and quick ways. So, if you're in a particular situation, you're behind a piece of cover and you're being shot at and you don't know what to do and you're sort of frazzled, how do you shift out of that mindset? But it can also be broader and far-reaching, and in having some conversations with Jon lately, I've come to realize that we share similar mindsets in certain places, but different ones in others. And I thought it'd be great to have a conversation with Jon about some of those similarities and differences and talk about how his mindset in particular has evolved over the years. And Jon, I guess where we can start is by acknowledging that when you joined the team roughly like a million years ago, you'd been playing Airsoft as a lone wolf for a fair amount of time, right? Several years, I'd say.
You could say another million.
Yeah, for sure. But it's not that you weren't a team player prior to joining the team, not at all. But I think you were primarily focused on playing your game and your own performance, I guess, not necessarily on how that interacted on the field. And so I thought this is a good place to start because your mindset since that point has definitely shifted to where it is today, right?
Yeah, the move over to the modern, I guess to the team, was really me wanting to experiment with the modern kit, and there was no better crowd that I wanted to be associated with that if I was to run it than to be with you guys. Mm-hmm. So we've played together. You were at my very first Airsoft game, and you will be at my very last Airsoft game, I would imagine.
I suspect so, unless you outlive me.
Yeah, dude. So right from the onset, I was kind of like fostered with that notion that teamwork makes the dream work. And I know nothing here, so I'm just going to take a step back, and I might manifest my ideal Airsoft game based off what I was watching at the time, which was Scout the Doggy videos. So I was trying to reenact that to the best of my abilities while also LARPing. But yeah, I never really thought of myself as like an individual player. I always thought of myself as a team player. And that's something I still obviously consider myself today, even when I play games outside of like when I'm running with you or anyone else on the team. And if it's a bunch of randos, like I'm part of that team. I don't like the Storm Rider patch is just a patch.
Yeah,
in that regard. So it's like my immediate team is the 6 or 7 guys that are I'm going to be rolling with for this 10, 15-minute game.
For sure. But I think, one of the things that I've noticed, especially in the last, let's say 3 or 4 years in particular, is, and I like you said, you're absolutely right. Like, I never considered you a player who was like, I'm just going to do my own thing and not worry about the team objective. I think you were always very conscious, like most Airsofters are, that it's a team game. You have to be able to play on a team, whether it's your teammates or your big T teammates. But one of the things that I did notice about your mindset shift in particular is back then you were focused on how can I support the team in terms of our objectives and whatever.
Exactly.
Whereas I've noticed now it's also there's this new edge of how can I also support the team in playing better themselves and smarter themselves, not just what am I going to do. And the thing that always sticks up to me, and I think about this very often, like they say, like the kids say, it lives rent free in my head, is this moment where I'm behind cover and I look over and I see you to my left and you just look at me and you're like, Phil, keep your gun up behind cover. And I was like, yeah, dude. But that's a kind of that's a kind of thing that occurs when you have enough sort of confidence in your own skills and abilities and stuff like that, but also enough bandwidth, like mental bandwidth about what's going on the field to look
Yeah.
at one of your teammates and go, hey, he could benefit from a piece of help right now, whatever that looks like, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely a shift I've noticed in you over, over the last several years, as I said.
Yeah. And um, I my mindset on it right now is just kind of like I don't take it seriously, but I
Mm-hmm.
do it at the same time. Like it does. Like I, every I get stressed out about a bunch of things. I am human.
Yeah.
But airsoft really doesn't stress me out anymore. That's the biggest thing for me. And as we were discussing a few weeks ago, I don't really have any, like, the only thing that's late the only label that I have is the Storm Rider patch. And to me that's just an excuse to hang out with my best friends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like I don't really hold that to a prestige, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't really put myself like, I know when people think of the Storm Riders, in my mind at least, I'm never like one of the people that comes to mind in that hypothetical situation. So it's like
Right.
I don't really have the same like pressure or anything like that. I feel I could be completely wrong. I mean, when people think of the team, they could think of me, you, Kosh, Chris, and Pat. For all
Mm-hmm.
I know, I don't know what other people think like, but in my mind, I just tell myself like, oh, I'm just me. I'm just part of this team because I like hanging out with you guys and you're my best friends. Um, and I just work well with you guys and you guys understand what's going on. So like I never really get that stress, and that goes into the idea of the mental bandwidth. When I stopped taking airsoft so seriously, and I realized it's a game, and yeah, there are stressful moments for sure. And I really bite at those. I make sure I get a good grasp, and I really acknowledge the fact that this is a stressful situation, and I really like I thrive in those situations. I always find, and it's just because like it's a challenge for me, and I have to
Mm-hmm.
think immediately, and I have to make what I deem to be the right decision, whether it is or not, in the grand scheme of things. Um, yeah, and I mean, I guess the linchpin moment for me was just getting that BB blasted in my chin. That was kind of like that was kind of the moment that I said, "This is ridiculous. This
Yeah.
is absolutely ridiculous."
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's interesting because, like, the first place that you went to for like as a stressor is this, like, oh, the pressure to perform and stuff. But there's also this other pressure that you're talking about right now. There's other stressor, I should say, of like, yeah, you get blasted in the face and you could get a BB stuck in there, or it's gonna hurt, or at a less important level, like you're not afraid to get hit, but you don't want to get hit because you want to stay in the game or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that's certainly a mindset that, I mean, I've been behind cover and I'm like, man, I really don't want to get hit right now. I really don't want to.
Mm.
And that's a stressor as well, right? And so what your mindset looks like, is certainly, if you're like, oh, well, I don't want to get hit because I don't want people to think that I'm bad at airsoft or whatever. So that's
Yeah.
certainly one aspect. But the other is, okay, like, I'm concerned about being hit because I don't want to, like, lose the game, or I don't want to lose
Mm-hmm.
my team's advantage or whatever. And like that also requires a bit of a shift in your perspective that you were just talking about.
Yeah. And I don't really have the fear of getting hit now. Like, it's not like, oh my God, I'm going to get shot. I'm going to freeze. Like a deer
Yeah,
in the
dude, but
headlight.
like you've had the worst, right? So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. In my mind, it's just like, it's going to sting for a bit and it's going to be mildly uncomfortable. Depending on
yeah.
who does it, they're going to give me a razzing. So those are that's kind of like the biggest paramount thing that I take into account when I'm playing a game and like the odds are against me.
Mhm.
Like if it's like Kirby, for example, who's against me, I'm like, no way. There is no way he's going to shoot me because I know he will not let me live it down, and
Yeah.
I have to make sure I'm better than him. Um, so there's like a little element of like playfulness with it there, um, but like the the big thing is just I don't really care about getting hit, and that allows me to think and really take a step back and know there's always something better that I could be doing. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's funny. The other night I was thinking like you and I should just go over to frontline and start doing some like drills or something, like using some sort of unorthodox like means if we're getting pushed in hard, how will we react to it? And I was in the back of the village there and around the church, and I said, why don't just do something we would never think to do, like get inside the buildings and wait for them to move past us.
Yeah,
Like
that's a fair point. Yeah,
just different things like that. Because it spices up the game. That's the first point, but like the second point is like makes you just kind of a little bit unpredictable, and that unpredictability is something that I think I have going. I don't know if you feel like I might do something unorthodox in the field if we're against each other in like a 1v1 setting. Are you like, I don't know what your mindset is in that type of situation. Are you always like checking everything, or are you, I'm curious to know your state of mind, if it's me or someone else.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Like I typically don't tend to think personally, like my mindset, I don't typically tend to think about the people who I'm going up against necessarily.
Yeah, sure.
Not in the context of oh well, Jon is really sneaky, but I also think about like what are they capable of in terms of their like rifle performance, for example. That's a big one, right?
Yeah.
So for instance, like if I know that I am going up against, like, say, Jason Fong, right? He has a rifle with really long range. He's very accurate with it. I know that I can't stay back, right?
Yeah.
And so I need to take my planning into consideration, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's pretty much as far as that goes. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, Jason's, really fast or highly mobile, or, oh, I'm going up against Matt and Matt like moves around a lot. And like that, I'm not really thinking about that too much. For me, I like the way that I approach it is through, and I guess maybe this is predictability in many ways, but it's sort of sticking to what I know in terms of good fundamentals. So it's kind of like when you're playing chess, right? It doesn't really matter. Like you don't need to study openings and stuff like that. I mean, you probably should. I'm not a chess podcaster, but like, like there's certain principles you develop towards the center, right? You want to take as much center space as possible. You play principled chess. I really try and play principled airsoft. I know the concepts that work well, good cover utilization, getting off the line, like all those kinds of things. And I try to apply them regardless of who I'm playing with. And my experience with trying new stuff, right?
Yeah.
In many ways tends to go not very well. And then I typically will sort of peel back from that. I was like, that was horrible. I'm not doing that again. And I remember like, one game you and I were playing, it was in the village, and we were like on the backside or whatever. And I mean, if you guys who are listening have never played the village, that's fine. Just the point of this is we're behind a piece of cover, and I know that there's enemies advancing towards our position on the left. And I said to Jon, like, we gotta go. And he's like, go where? And I was like, I don't know, just keep going. And so I went and he followed, which is to your credit, Jon. But like we got shot like 20 feet, like, we got to the next piece of cover. I smoked some kid, actually. That's the one where I bowled him over. I don't know if you remember that, but like I ran around the corner and he was coming towards me, but his rifle wasn't up and mine was, and I just started like smoking him and he fell backwards. We got behind the church. I moved to the next piece of cover and like got shot immediately, right? And after that, I was like, that was stupid. And then you were like, that was stupid, and that's fair. Like, it wasn't a great move. And at the time, like, I was like, all right, let's just go do something fast, rather than sort of stick to my principles of we're in cover, nothing needs to happen right now, we're in a good position, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's where we get into the differences between you and I in a stressful situation, because we were both living that same experience. And you said, all right, we're being static here for a little too long. We're going to get our stuff pushed in. We should probably make a move. I know I can generally assume that's what you were thinking. And it was for those reasons that I had outlined that you said, all right, we have to move. Me, on the other hand, I knew we were in a pretty good spot. There's only two real avenues of approach that could come to us and hit us from. So if we lock those down, sure, we're going to be camping, but like, movement's not paramount in that type of situation. And
totally. And in that case, we were outnumbered anyway. Like, it would have been to our advantage to just stick around, right?
Most definitely. And that's something like, I guess my play style is just, it's loose. It's not bound by anything. It's not like it's hard to sum up, trying to summarize your play style in a few sentences. Like, I just feel like I'm just loose in it. Like, I just let things happen as they go. Sure, we have a plan. We often always have a plan going into a game. And we always try to execute that appropriately. but obviously we know that we're going to meet resistance at some point, and we're going to have to think on the fly at some point.
Yeah.
So it's just going with the flow there and just realizing, like, because for me, only when I transition shoulders is the only time I think about manipulation with my airsoft gun. It's the only time, and I usually think of it in advance, and I prepare myself to do that move, but still being cognizant of what's going in and around me. So, like, for example, if I'm taking a corner that I know is going to be exposing my left side and I have to transition, then I'm going to move slow, transition, have it up, ready to go, and then just take it slow, and then just react to it as it comes. And then once it's clear, set back behind cover, get my proper shoulder up, and then I'm just going to move. I'm going to continue with that execution of that plan. And when I always have, like, I don't know if you're the same way, but I have a profile for everyone that I've kind of like summarized their characteristics on the airsoft field. And I use that to like kind of motivate my decision making. So like I know you're aggressive and you like to shoot. So,
really? Tell me more.
Yeah. I know you like to get a little char in your fingers from that little motor. But so I know how to deal with the problems that you're going to present to me. Because I mean, ultimately, airsoft is problem solving.
Yeah.
And I like doing tactile problem solving like that. It's quite fun, I find. And I know how to deal with you. And another good example, probably a little bit better, is Matt. Matt, I know his play style so well. And I know he likes to take it tight with corners. He likes to be inside the village, really cramped up. And I know if I just say, all right, it's just Matt and I'm going to step back. I'm going to go around the perimeter, give myself all the advantages I can, clear everything on the perimeter. So I know that I'm moving to the piece of cover that's clear. I know everything to the best of my knowledge, of course, because otherwise I'm still going against someone that's active on the field. So there's an aura of unpredictability associated with it. So I always have these I say, okay, Matt's there. All right, he's going to be in the center. I'm just going to go wide, take my corner slow, and deal with it as it comes. If he comes up behind me, then that's what I want to see. I want to be proven wrong. That he's changing. That means I have to change as well. I have to get on his level, or I have to get on your level. And I have to adapt my thinking and just react to it, because everything that I do on the field is pretty well second nature to me by now, having a million years under my belt.
Well, and I think you mentioned, you said, well, your play style is loose. And I think, not to correct you or anything like that, but I think the interpretation that I would use on that is you are very much reactive to what's immediately in front of you in terms of a problem or whatever, or the players who you're going up against. And we're fortunate enough to play Airsoft in a small community where you can know different people's play styles that you're playing with or against pretty well, because it's the same group of people. And some communities in the world who play Airsoft, in the States and stuff, it's not going to be the case. And others around the world, it is going to be the case. And if it's the case for you, then, that might apply. But for our purposes, I think you and I think Chris is similar in this. It's what is the thing that's right in front of me right now? How am I problem solving this? Whereas for me, and this is where this sort of mindset starts to occur, is, I'm getting, well, anxious is probably not the right connotation, but I'm starting to consider what's going to happen next, and what's the next thing, and what's the next thing. Yeah. Right. So we're behind this piece of cover, and your thinking is, okay, well, we're just going to hold this right now because we're in a good position. Everything is Loctite, no problem. Yeah. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, they're advancing here. We're not going to be able to take this corner. So we got to go, because that way, when they get there, we won't be there anymore. And so I'm operating, and it's the difference, I guess, between tactics and strategy. Sure. Right? We're trying to solve this problem tactically right now, but in my mind, I'm in my mindset. In this case, I'm faulting myself here, not you. Yeah. In this case, my mindset is a strategic mindset, and it needs to be tactical, right? It needs to be focused on what is immediately happening right in front of us right now, because quite frankly, we might not be in the game in 5 minutes time. Yeah. Right?
I mean, it's just reacting tactically for strategic problems is what it is. I don't know if it's to a fault, but I know the objective of the game. If there's a set objective other than eliminate the other team or raise a flag or advance to a certain position or something like this, I know what the objective is, and it's always in the back of my mind. And I take every firefight and I take it one step at a time. That's all I do. I go,
Yeah.
if we're doing a team deathmatch, for example, in the village, and we're over by the church spawn, my first goal is to go wide on the right side and hold the corner and let someone pass me. That's the first thing. The second thing, once I see that that's safe to do, is all right, I'm going to move to the next piece of cover, move with my buddy. And then once I'm set there, make sure we're secure here, make sure our flanks are tight. Once that's done, all right, what's next? Moving up. Or if we're meeting resistance, I'm going to hold back. And it might be the case that I say, all right, Buster, you stay here. I'm going to move around to the left, trying to see if I can't make something happen. And then it's just flying by the seat of my pants. I'll backtrack to probably the last safe place that I know, and then kind of go where the wind takes me after that. And it's just like, in that case, the strategic objective is still eliminate the players, and now it's just immediate. So on the tactical level, I'm thinking, all right, my immediate threat is this one person keeping me and my friend down. Yeah. All right, how do I do that while being situationally aware of what's going around me? I don't know the situation on the left side of the field. I only know the right. So it's like executing things really slow. And like, that's kind of how I just do it. It's just one thing at a time. I tell myself what I want to see happen, and if it's not possible, then I tell myself what I'd like to see happen.
And it's interesting because as the more I've thought about sort of how we play Airsoft, especially at Frontline, and even when we played at Red Cliff, we were realistically, like, I remember many years ago, like, I bought and I printed a small unit tactics manual, like a NATO thing, and I was studying it about, like, mobile operations in urban terrain, and like squad movements, and like defilade and this and enfilade fire that, and like all these types of strategic concepts for basic infantry leadership. Right. And I thought that was really interesting. I thought it would give us an edge in terms of our planning in Airsoft and all this kind of stuff. But when you think about the kinds of Airsoft that we play on most days, and especially, and I mean, I'm not going to say that that's the case for most Airsofters, but if you think about like your average weekend skirmish at a like CQC, field, your opportunities to engage in like legitimate strategy is pretty limited. Right? Yeah, and that's like, if we're playing a full field game at Frontline, then there's an opportunity for us to think about, okay, well, how are we going to funnel the enemy movements through one particular area to give ourselves an advantage, right? How are we going to encircle? How are we going to, move our flank over to the right to, create this sort of L shape and, encase them in an area, like all that. Like, you can think about that stuff, but the opportunities to do that are very limited. And so what you're left with, in my case at least, is this desire to apply strategy when really your mindset needs to be focused on like what you were describing, like what's the next thing? Yeah. Right? Not like, what is, mate and five. What is the next fifth move? It's what is the next thing I need to be focused on?
I mean, I study that stuff all the time. That's basically like all I do. It's just study, read, watch videos demonstrating effective small unit tactics. What's funny, I've never put two and two together, but I've never once referenced anything that I've learned from those videos on the Airsoft field, because I know the core fundamentals, and the fundamentals are what we teach. It's move with a pair, fire and maneuver, suppress the enemy, and move up on them. That's what Airsoft is.
Yeah, rinse, repeat until you've won, right? Yeah.
And when you start complicating things like that, that's when your thought process is going to start slowing down. That's when you're going to start experiencing what you called anxiety. Mm-hmm. It's because you're thinking too far ahead and you're not focusing on the immediate threat. Like totally. I could be behind a piece of cover and just having a hail of BBs coming in. but I'm never once going to freeze. I'm always going to readjust myself, maybe position my rifle in a different way, collapse the stock even, just giving myself whatever advantage I possibly can in the worst case scenario to really make sure that I can come out on top. And, it's those type of decision makings that that you make in these very stressful situations when there's like four guys or something just wailing on you behind a piece of plywood cover, and all you're hearing is this tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, yeah.
And I often in those situations I just laugh and then I say, "All right," and then I just readjust myself, and it's just readjusting to meet the immediate threat. I've never been in that situation and thought, all right, once I take out these four guys, what am I going to do next? It's always, how am I going to get myself out of this?
Yeah. And laugh about it, right? I think you raise a really good point. Like, you need to be able to sort of disassociate your stress from the situation. Because, I mean, if you got four people shooting at you, that is stressful in the sense that it's not going very well, right?
Yeah.
But you need to disassociate that stress from actual mental, like that stress shouldn't be stressing you out, if that makes any sense. Like, it shouldn't be occupying your active brain power, because you said something earlier which I think was very astute, which is that you've got limited bandwidth and you got to be spending that on the things that actually matter, the things that are actually going to push you in the right direction on the field.
Definitely.
Like, maybe it gets you hit, but the old saying is, you can do everything right and still lose. Like, that's fine, right? That's just how life is, right? But you have to have the bandwidth to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah, and like, I'm not afraid to fail. I mean, failing is the only way I learn, for better or worse. Like, throwing stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Like, I often in those situations when I'm getting suppressed and I'm trying to make the best of a bad situation, I often then I focus my attention to one, observing my surroundings, then two, I'm doing that while also focusing on the thing that I'm expressing more brain power on, which is, have I fired many BBs out of this magazine? Should I reload? Yeah, I probably should. I'm going to reload. That takes my mind off it, while also, like, I'm good at reloading. I don't need to like look at my rifle to do it. I can do it effectively and still not putting my head down. I'm still like looking around, readjusting myself, getting in a better position, and then just making sure that I'm setting myself up for success. Whether or not I achieve it is up for debate.
Yeah. But you gotta have like that fundamental sort of baseline, right? And you talked about like how, if you're shooting off on your offside, you're, take it a little bit slower. Like, if you're the kind of person who so you're behind a piece of cover and like your kit is brand new to you and you've never used this rifle before, and you're, fiddling to find the safety, you don't really, the optic isn't zeroed properly, or the sling is not the right length for you. And you're managing all of this stuff that's taking your active brain power to, and we've talked about this before, like the whole idea of getting these skills ingrained is you spend less time focusing on that stuff and more time focusing on the stuff that's happening around you. And that goes double if you're stressed out by, your mindset is, oh my God, like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm going to get shot, etc. And you don't have enough bandwidth then to also pay attention to your surroundings, to look at your teammates, to see like, where are they? Like, are they up on line with me, or am I advanced farther than them? Like, can I peel back? Where's the next piece of cover? Like, all these kinds of questions about your immediate are taken over by like, how am I going to reload this gun? Where are my mags? Like, I don't know where my my thing is, like all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's a unique situation. So I obviously had to experience all those things firsthand when you guys were very established in that, where I was making the transition from Second World War kit to modern kit. And I would never really overextend myself. Because I knew my limitations, and I'm comfortable with the fact that at that point I wasn't that good at what I was doing with that kit. I wasn't familiar with it. So why would I go, Chuck Norris style and just go absolutely bananas when I knew I would not be effective in that manner. So it would just be counterproductive if I did that. It's difficult to like articulate these things that I've never once thought about. So I apologize if I'm repeating myself or anything like that. It's like, yeah, it's just taking things as they come is kind of like the biggest thing, and just making sure prioritizing the most important thing. If I'm being shot at by four guys, what's the most important thing? Staying behind cover. What's the second most important thing? Making sure I'm not getting hit. What's the third most important thing? Well, is my rifle all right? Okay.
Yeah.
My Z. And when you're listing off a bunch of things that could be going wrong, like your optic's not zeroed, I know for a fact I would just remove the optic
Yeah.
because
Totally.
it's limiting. It's just a hindrance more than an asset.
Mhm.
And most people are like, no, I have to have my optic on. It looks cool. And I'm like, nah, it's not practical. I mean, everything that I do in airsoft is practical. I find like the kit that I wear, whether it just be a belt with 6 mags that are flopping all over the place, or if it's short shorts and a chest rig that contains 4 magazines, like I know they're effective. It's just I'm dressed for the weather. I'm dressing one because it looks cool, and two, like it's just effective. I don't need other things on me, my person, besides a spare battery, maybe, but most importantly, magazines and BBs.
Yeah.
So like I it's interesting because when we start looking back at our kit or you and Pat's kit over time, like when you have all of these different things going on with your chest rig, your plate carrier, like your old, like when you had the Scar, I don't know what the chest rig or the plate carrier was.
That was
Was it
my
like,
old Cyraz. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Like there's a million different things going on with that kit. I don't know how you could be effective with it. Like, because you have to manage so much, you have to maneuver around so much. Like, did you find that impeded your decision making at the time?
Well, we didn't really think about it that way. I think the
Okay.
mindset has shifted definitely to more of a performance-based mindset, especially since the team got, I'm going to say, like, once we started expanding and we started playing games that were like objective-based games, and
Mm-hmm.
we had guys like Matt and Chris and Miles join the team and start thinking about what does performance look like in Airsoft for
Yeah.
us, right? That's when we started really objectively looking at our kits, being like, oh yeah, this is better, right?
It's
For me, if you talk to me in 2010, for example, I
sure.
would have told you that the kit that I had was the best that's available, right? That's the best thing I have. It's a Cyraz, it works amazing. I have
Yeah.
a drop leg, it works amazing,
Yeah.
right? I'm wearing fake plates, and that's fine. I would. That's what I would have told you, right?
Yeah.
And I never once at that time would have considered: do I need a smaller plate carrier? Are my cummerbunds getting in the way when I'm aiming?
Yeah.
We had certain concepts that we would preach of
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, you shouldn't carry anything above your sidearm in case you need to draw it. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
sidearm was on a drop leg, so like, why is that a problem? What's going to get in
Yeah.
the way of that? We weren't
Yeah.
thinking in that way. Our mindset had not evolved to a place where we were trying to push our own performance.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, at the time, this is again, we've been playing Airsoft for at the time 4 years,
Yeah.
right? I thought I was hot shit, man. I thought I was like the bee's knees.
Yeah.
And everything that I was doing was top shelf. And the reality was that, like I wasn't pushing myself. I was sort of resting on my laurels because I'd been doing it for a really long time. And that was the mindset that we had at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
it was fine because at that particular time, like it wasn't super, it's not to say that it wasn't competitive, but like people weren't pushing themselves in the way that they're pushing themselves now, right?
Sure.
People in the airsoft community today, people are way faster, way craftier.
Mm-hmm.
Like guys like you and Shane who move around, or Matt, for example, who move around really quickly.
Yep.
Back when in 2010, like we would have had one person like that, maybe two,
Yeah.
right? Now, it's not that you're dime a dozen, but you go to the frontline field and you see a lot of players playing that way, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so to come back to your question, like I wasn't looking at my kit, my mindset on, and this is where we're talking about like a bigger mindset of like
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
airsoft looks like for you, wasn't focused on like how can I be better, right? It was
Yeah.
more about like at the time I would say how can I win as much as I can,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how can I not also lose in places where I feel like I should have won,
Yeah.
right? And I would say that like that's kind of it today as well. Like we want to win when we can, and we don't want to lose when we shouldn't have. I don't think that has really changed very much. But our
Yep.
approach has shifted a lot on bettering ourselves to make that happen
Mm-hmm.
versus just sort of doing this and sort of like without a plan, just let's do our best to get there. It's like
Yeah.
no, like we have a set method that we approach. We're looking into what else we could be doing differently, and our play style is changing. I would say year over year, even month over month in certain cases.
Yeah, most
Um,
definitely.
Whereas in my play style from 2010 to 2006, I will tell you, probably did not evolve a whole lot, right?
Yeah. When did you think the big transition in terms of your play style really occurred? What year?
I think when probably 2013, 2014,
Okay.
like when we had like a broader team, we had opportunities to train in different ways.
Hmm.
And I remember like one of the training days that we had, it was um, Pat, myself, and Cal, obviously, but then we had Miles, and we had Chris, and we had Mario, and we had Matt, and we had Shane. We had like, I don't know, like 10 or 12 guys
Yeah.
at this training day. And we were practicing like maneuvering around the octagon, like breaking contact, like basically small unit tactics, but
Sure.
like legit small unit tactics because we had a small unit that
Hmm.
could do those kinds of things. Like we had a saw, and like we could do a bunch of that stuff. And as a result of doing those kinds of activities, that's when we started being like, okay, well, our mindset needs to be okay, but oh well, Matt is faster than me. Why is Matt faster than me? Oh well, he has a smaller play carrier. Why does he have a smaller play carrier? Oh well, there's less bulk on the sides. Oh, that's
Mm.
really cool. Let me see about that, right? And so I'm surrounded now by people who are my peers, but also who are like better than me. And I'm looking at their stuff being like, why is it that they're better than me? Like, what do they,
Yeah.
and that's when that sort of mechanism starts going of like, oh, what are they doing? I want to do that. And like, it's really no secret. Like when I look at how my kit has evolved, that I've looked at Chris and Cal and you and gone, what are these guys doing? I want to do that same thing because I want to be as effective as them. Right.
Yeah.
And in certain cases, the types of things that you're doing may or may not work for me, but I haven't found an instance where I'm like, oh, well, using a 2 point didn't work for me. No, using a 2 point was great. No,
Yeah.
using a chest rig didn't work for me. Nope, using chest rig was also great. Right. So there's been a lot of that, just sort of mindset shift by virtue of the fact that you're surrounded with other people who push you to be better.
Yeah. It's not even that so much as it's the differing opinions and their attitudes towards kit. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest takeaway that I just got from that sentiment was you being critical, you being critical in the right ways of not being like a juice ass trying to be like, oh, why don't you do this? This is the best. It's well, they're doing something different. They're getting better results than me. How can I change? And that's
Mhm.
that's a pretty important thing to realize in terms of like any competitive sport or anything, or just being a person in general. Like
Yeah.
it's I wasn't that's not the answer I was anticipating, but I'm glad that's like what it turned out to be. Like that's really interesting.
Well, and I'll tell you too. Like, I mean, like I love Pat. Pat has been my friend since we were very, very small,
Yeah.
and he challenges me in a lot of different ways.
Hmm.
In our conversations and stuff, and all this kind of stuff. But one place where he has not really challenged me is with our airsoft kit. Like when we started
Okay.
playing airsoft, right? He was doing what I was doing,
Yeah.
right? Which is fine, and this is not criticism by any stretch of the imagination.
Hmm.
But Pat was doing what I was doing, and Cal, who was very young at the time still, was sort of mirroring what we were doing as well. And then when he rolled over into the forces, that was, that's a different kettle of fish. But then when we
Yeah.
started adding guys like Mark and Mario, Jason, Miles, Chris, Matt, those guys did not have the sort of blood relationship that Pat and I have. And
Hmm.
so consequently, we started getting that honest feedback of like,
Yeah.
oh, you're doing stuff differently. And they didn't care to do it my way. They
Sure.
just did it the way that made sense for them.
Yeah.
And that's when you started to see that exposure to let's try new things, right? So for sure. And if anybody is listening, like you don't necessarily have to have teammates to have that relationship, right? If
Yeah.
you have people in your community, you can just inquire about what are you using, why are you using that. If you see someone in your field who's really, really good, you could just ask them, be like, hey, so what are you rocking, what's your kit like, how do you find that works, like being inquisitive in the same kind of ways. Now it's obviously not everyone is as gregarious to just go up to a random person and be like, hey man,
Hmm.
but there's that opportunity as well. It's easier if you have a team, right?
Yeah. And if there's like going back on that, kind of piggybacking on that, something that It's interesting that you missed, given the nature of this conversation, is the mindset that those people that are better than you have. Is how to like maybe buddy up with them for a game, see how they approach things, and then at the
Yeah.
end of the game, ask them why they did what they did. Why did you take that corner so aggressively? Do you feel confident in your abilities to be able to take it? You didn't know what was on the other side. How did you know that? Like what motivated those decisions that you made?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you could really get somewhere with that, because shifting ideas with kit is one thing, but shifting ideas mentally in terms of your attitude towards airsoft is a completely different one.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, I think, undervalued, because no one really talks about mentality in airsoft. Like why do people act aggressively? Like what motivates that behavior? Like, and then obviously what motivates the kit as well is another question. And something that we were just discussing. Yeah, I find these big questions in terms of motivation so interesting. And I ask myself sometimes, like at the end of the game, why did I do this, or why did I do that, or want to know the reason why I didn't want to get a sling for so long? It's because I thought it was going to complicate my setup.
Mm-hmm.
By adding this thing that could get in the way, could impede my reloads, could impede my shoulder transitions, could do X, Y, and Z and the other thing. Basically acting on that anxiety or that fear that you had was manifesting its way outside of airsoft. And it was just like, I don't want to do this because it's going to complicate things.
Yeah.
I know it works.
Rather than trying it, right?
Exactly. And that's how you get stuck in those fickle positions where you don't want to change or do anything like that.
Well, I'm glad we wore you down.
Yeah, finally. I remember the first game I played with the sling. I was very nervous about it. It was one of the few times I was actually quite nervous about it. And it was with a bunch of my friends, outside of airsoft friends, and we did a private game at Frontline. They had never played airsoft before. Well, one had, but everyone else is basically flatline experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I, the competitor, wanted to challenge all 5 of my friends against me. And, I was like, I got to see if I could do it. And if I could do it, I can make fun of them till the cows come home. This is free real estate. And, they were all game for it. They're like, oh, we're going to easily crush you just based off numbers. And the only thing I did in that game, I got smoked after I got 2, I think, in the first one. I got shot in the ankle. Then we did it again, swap sides. And I said, all right, I'm just going to be loose. I'm just going to be loose. I'm going to be slippery. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to shoot from one angle, move, then shoot again, move. But all of these other things that are going on in the back of my mind are all muscle memory. Like, my airsoft gun was not down for a fraction of a second. It was always up. I purposely gave myself the impediment of loading a couple squirts of BBs from my speed loader into each mag, just to make it a bit fair, because I had so much experience, they had none. So I knew, I was like, okay, got to be really focusing on my reloads, really focusing on this and that and this and that. And, I smoked them all on the second game.
You just needed a warm-up game, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they asked me how I did it, and I was just like, it's just reacting to stressful things. Like, I don't shut off. It's just, all right, I'm being shot at. Sick. Let's just reevaluate the situation. Take a step back, move somewhere else if need be, check in my surroundings, and then just go with the flow of things. It would be interesting to hear this from the perspective of someone with real skill experience, who's actually been in actual firefights, to see how their thought process kind of trickles into the airsoft realm. You know what I mean? I feel like that could be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I think you just you touch on something that I think I wanted to mention too. It's like, you can put yourself in that loosey-goosey mindset.
Yep.
And you can still get shot.
Oh, most definitely.
Right? And I think that I've experienced that myself, where I'm like, I'm going to be loose, or I'm going to really focus on not focusing, I guess.
Yeah.
Just really sort of just put myself in this Zen reactive space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as I do something, I'm taking a corner. I'm like, oh, there's a guy there. I'm getting shot at. Cool. Oh, I'm hit. I'm out. right? And then like that can happen,
Yeah.
right? So I think to your point though, there is this there's a benefit to doing it, but it might not work out for you the first time.
Oh,
So you've
definitely.
gotta do it a second time and just try and focus. One of the things I wanted to touch on, sort of like as a last bit, I remember one of the very first games of paintball that I played. This
Yeah.
was back when everything was still in black and white, like probably like 1789 or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
approximately.
Yeah, that's when I was born.
But it was forever ago. It was like one of the first airsoft paintball games I ever played. And I remember that I had read a lot of like, I was really nervous about the first game. I was like, oh man, like I'm gonna, I want to do well. I was really interested in like SWAT teams and stuff. I was really young, and I was like, I got to do well. So I read that one of the things that happens to people is they get tunnel vision. And another thing that people do that is not really good, and actually we see a lot of, is they don't move enough, right? And I also heard that you had to keep your elbows tucked into your body, which P.S. you do.
Yeah.
So what I decided to do is I decided to write those three words. I wrote tunnel vision, elbows, and move on a little piece of paper, and I stuck it to my paintball hopper. Right. And for those who never play paintball, the hopper is basically just like a container that holds your paintballs on the side of your gun. Right. So I stuck it there, and it's highly visible. And I was like, that way, when I'm playing, I'll have that as a reminder all the time. And the ref who was there, who was a bit of an ass, but whatever, was like, what is that? And I was like, oh, it's a reminder for myself, like to do these three things because they're really important. He's like, do you really think you're going to, be able to read that during a game? And I was like, yeah, of course I will. Whatever. I never looked at it during the game. Right? Because
you were
totally like once the paint started flying and the stress started happening, like I was entirely focused on, oh my God, I'm going to get hit. Right. And I didn't know. And so that same stress still occurs for a lot of players. And to your point, I think the challenge, though, is that I was in this situation and I did not recognize that I was in that situation. So how do you, from your perspective, so you try and be loosey-goosey, you try and be sort of stress-free, carefree, so like, oh, I'm being shot at, sick, whatever. How do you recognize that you're being stressed out? And what do you do at that point when you recognize it's like, whoa, hang on. How do you get to that point? Because there's lots of people listening and they might be like, this is all fine and great, but what happens when I get stressed if I don't want to be stressed?
Oh, okay. Well, recently, I just haven't really been getting stressed. Like, it's such a stupid, not like lazy response to say, but like I don't remember the last time I was really stressed about a game. And it's because I just don't get tunnel visioned, I guess. Like I'm always just looking around. I like if there's I remember taking a corner aggressively and someone had their pistol down because we're in the village and their AEG went down or whatever. And he wasn't paying attention. He was tunnel visioned on where he last saw me, and I moved around him, and he saw me for a split second, and I had my airsoft gun up, ready to go, flipped off the safety, clack, got him, moved on to the next one. Like it's hard to really say. Like being in a stressful situation is like everyone finds stress differently, and I don't really get. Outside of like airsoft, like I said off the rip, I just don't find it that stressful. Like it's just take it one step at a time. It's just I guess that's the answer. It's just taking things one thing at a time. What can I do to better myself?
So thinking back though, like so you haven't gotten stressed recently, and that's that's great.
Yeah.
And I think your tip of taking one thing at a time is very applicable and something that I'm trying to do more and more of. But thinking back to situations where you had been stressed, or not necessarily like stressed out, but like what are some of the symptoms, or what are some of the ways that you can sort of, for lack of a better term, and I really don't like this expression when we use it because people might understand, how do you snap out of it?
Oh, laughing. I remember my very first game of airsoft. By all accounts, I should have been shit baked. But every time I was taking fire, I hit the deck. I was usually always on the deck because I was like, I don't want to get shot. But then I just realized like someone's actually shooting at me, and this has actual consequences. This is hilarious. And like once I laughed about it, obviously I had no, like, I was using a Walmart special. Like, there was no hope for me on the airsoft battlefield at that point. Like, it was just, how can I ease my mind and just accept the fact I'm going to get smoked by you or Pat or my dad at some point? And it was just by laughing at it, just laughing at the absurdity. And that allowed me to like snap out of it and be like, oh, okay, I'm probably going to get shot. If I do, I hope it doesn't hurt, but I've never been shot before. And then I got shot in the lip by you and it swole up. And I was like, oh, damn it. I got to go back to grade 9 with a fat lip. No way.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, that's just laugh it off, collect yourself. Well, you don't actually have to laugh it off. Like, if I think on that footage that you recorded from me, Phil, when you gave me the GoPro one day, I was just talking to myself the entire time, laughing, saying, oh, there's a guy there. I wonder if I can hit him. All right, I probably can't. Ooh, take a fire now. Duck behind cover. Where's that coming from? And I would holler out to someone to see if they had eyes on. And they said, yeah, he's behind. Excellent communication is one thing that really just doesn't create stress for me. I know for a fact, I always have the ability, well, unless I'm by myself, to ask someone where I'm being shot from. And then I can readjust myself accordingly. So in case, for example, if I'm overextended in some aspects, but like if I was really overexposing myself and I was starting to take fire and I realized it was inaccurate and I was able to stay in the game for a bit longer, I'd holler out saying, Phil, I'm getting shot from a new direction. Where's this direction? Do you see it? Do you see anyone? It's probably from the road, if I wanted to take a guess. And you say, yeah, he's behind the fuel canister. I'm like, all right, sick. What's my plan of attack then? All right, tuck in, minimize exposure to that one area. Take that one problem. Because, I mean, how do you answer a math test? It's one question at a time.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. Like, I think when your focus shifts away from, oh my God, this sucks, or I don't know what to do, or whatever, to, okay, what is actually the situation right now? Like, where are they? Where am I? Where are my friends? And you start answering those questions. It's not that it removes the stress, but it just changes your focus and it changes your mindset from your particular situation that you're in to the broader scope of like what else is going on, right?
You know, I just thought of a very apt comparison just then. I thought about it for a second. It's a math. Airsoft is no different than any other test, whether it be a math test, history test, or whatever. You open up the booklet and you say, oh my God, I don't know anything. And then you start find questions that you know how to find the answers to. Work on those questions first. Once you've done that a few times, your confidence is going to go up. And then you're going to feel a bit more loose. You're going to feel like I can remember more. Because the training in this sense is just studying. And if you're able to reflect back on your studying, and if you've done a good enough job, just like your fundamentals in Airsoft, then it doesn't really matter how many people you're up against. Because if you take it one question at a time or one player at a time, if the circumstances allow that, then you're really going to be setting yourself up for possibly some very clutch moments or just some hilarious like memories. And that's kind of like how I approach it.
That's a really, really good analogy for sure. And actually, you just sparked a thought in me, which is that, you know, at the end of the day, like you said, you know, the study is the training. And like for a lot of us, I think our approach is certainly that you can't go and write a test, or you shouldn't go and write a test without studying.
Yeah.
And if you do, then you're sort of like, you're left with just your innate sort of knowledge and ability and whatever you picked up through osmosis. But if you study, you improve your chances. And it's the same thing for us. I think like, yeah, you can not train if you don't want to, and that's fine. Like you know, don't work on your fundamentals on your own time. That's fine. But then when you hit the field, the problems that you're facing are likely going to, especially at the start, are likely going to be more challenging than they could have been.
They're going to be completely overwhelming. Because you don't have that solid base. And it's a double-edged sword because you could be studying the NATO playbook for small unit tactics and realizing on the airsoft field, oh shit, that actually doesn't apply here. So the hours of study that I just did are rendered useless.
Yeah, you were studying all night for history and your test is actually for biology.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to be focusing on the right thing. And this is why you should, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Stormriders YouTube channel.
Yeah, thanks for the plug.
We'll let you ace those tests.
Yeah. But it's a fair point. It's a fair
Yeah.
point, and it's there is, that's part of that mindset, and coming back to the whole idea of the larger mindset. That's really why I think the mindset that we have when it comes to airsoft nowadays is, I'm gonna say maybe healthier, but certainly more less stressful in a way. Because at
Definitely.
the end of the day, what I'm really focused on today, when I look at my airsoft today, like, yes, I get stressed in the moment and I get way more stressed out about the particular situations than you do. But really, my focus is I want to come off the field knowing that I did everything that I could as best as I could.
Definitely.
And if I won, that is great. If I lost and I can still say that I did everything sort of the best that I could, then that's great. I'm totally fine with that. Because at the end of the day, if I do everything right to the maximum of my ability, and I work with my teammates, and I communicate, and I do all the things, and I do have some ways that I can improve, but overall it's not performance killing, and I lost, what else can I do here?
Yeah. Airsoft is, in its very nature, a very overwhelming thing. It's a group of guys, well, it's a group of people that have airsoft guns that shoot anywhere up to 500 feet per second, and they're going to shoot you. Like, this is going to happen, and you're prepared for it. So if you prepare yourself the right way, then you should be, just as deadly as a threat as the rest of the people there. Like, it's just break it down, take it simple, take it slow. Just remember your fundamentals and really just have fun with it. Laugh when you're overwhelmed and just shake yourself out of that situation. I mean, I've definitely been in math classes or math public exam in grade 12 when I had a 50, and I knew if I failed this test, I was going to have to repeat grade 12. That when I opened that booklet, and I was like, I don't know what bed mass is. I completely forgot. And I fast forward a few pages. Oh yeah, I actually do remember. And I actually remember a lot of this stuff, just enough to get a 50 though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just take it one step at a time. It's the best thing I can tell you. If you wanted to be comfortable playing, just take it one problem at a time, because airsoft is problem solving.
Well, hopefully you guys found this discussion on our mindsets and how they've shifted, evolved over time, and like the micro, small M mindset versus the big M mindset. It can really make or break your airsoft day. And at the end of the day, I said it at the start, your mood has an impact on your mindset, but your mindset also has an impact on your mood.
Yep.
Right. And if you're, regardless of whether you want to perform or whether you're trying to win or whatever, if you got a crappy mindset and a crappy mood, that's not going to be a good day for you. Right. You can't control what other players are going to do. You can't control what other people are going to do. At the end of the day, you can really only control what is within your control. And that is how you're going to respond to stuff. And even if you don't do it perfectly on the airsoft field itself, and you're getting stressed, you're getting tunnel vision, you're getting taken out, all that's fine. When you get off the field and you have some time, you really need to consider, how do I feel about all this? And if you're feeling bad about it and you're feeling down, talk to a few people, bring your mood up, have a laugh, carry on. And remember, we're all doing this for fun, right? Yep. And if it's not being fun for you right now, try and figure out ways that it can be fun. Now, it's going to sometimes be frustrating, but on balance, over the last 16 years, I'll tell you, I've had a lot more fun days than I've had frustrating days. And that's what what we're trying to go for.
That's right.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. Like Johnny shamelessly plugged our YouTube channel. We do have our Discord as well. The link is in the description below.
Oh, yeah.
We would love to have you join the conversation. We have a multinational community there. It's a really great place to chat about airsoft and training and gear and all this kind of stuff and all points in between. We'd love to see you join. But until then, that's all we have for you. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.